Void Arcane will be huge. I don't know about that. I don't know about how huge Void would be. I almost don't want them to do the Void because like I feel like it will just be narrativized very simplistic and boring. I think they're gonna do big, spreading, all-encompassing evil versus people. People rally and win. Like I feel like that will be the conclusion of the Void spin-off idea. They close off the evil entity Void. You know, it's like. I feel like it would be devoid of all philosophy and just any depth. Hell, they even managed to like take something so fucking cool like the Piltover Zone and they kind of botched it in Season 2, so I've lost hope. I think Arcane Season 1 is a masterpiece. Season 2 fails to follow through for sure. Like, if I want to judge what's gonna happen in the next series, I'm judging it off of Season 2. Season 2 was the conclusion. It's not boring, but it's like, it's too much show, too much, like, they were trying to be cinematic for the sake of being cinematic. A lot of cool events, but without much substance. Season 1 was nothing but substance. Art substance. Pure fucking narrative. Season 2 had brilliant music though. They don't fail with that, for sure. Spent the whole season setting up class inequality and then said, let's be bestie because there's a greater threat. Yeah, it's like the philosophical rescue. It's just this Deus Ex Machina appearing, the god Victor appearing that completely absolves anyone from any depth of character. You know the movie Passengers? It's a brilliant setup of the movie, okay? So you're in space, they're traveling like for hundreds of years to a certain destination. There's a malfunction and a guy wakes up from the cryopod alone. Himself, okay? What do? You cannot go back, you're alone in space, super stuck. Okay? You're just you in space, doomed to die. So what does he do? He wakes up a hot chick next to him so they can spend time with her. He caves in. He's fighting with his own morality and he caves in eventually and he breaks open her pod. It's a brilliant setup of the movie. It's like, what do? Do you just age alone and die miserable, or you make somebody else? A huge moral question. So he wakes her up and he commits the ultimate sin, dooming her to die alone. And they become lovers and all of that, and then she figures out he lied, whatever. But then the rescue comes in the form of, oh, the ship is gonna explode or whatever, it's off course and they have to fix it. So they justify his own sin by basically just giving them an exit. They gave him an exit by a bigger threat. They just solved the complex moral dilemma. They solve it by the greater threat. It's boring. The captain dies, nobody gives a shit. But they saved it and now the humanity, like all the people on the ship are safe because he committed the sin of it. Like, initially. That's what I call an escape. Escape from the tough questions. And they did the same thing with the Arcane to an extent. They have this complex situation, morality-wise. You have apartheid, you have like oppressed people, you have this economic situation that produces even more oppression, and that creates like fragmentation and within the bottom society. There's people who just try to coexist to minimize the casualties in the short term, and there's more revolutionaries like Vel'Koz who's trying to topple the system entirely because he thinks it's going to be better in the long term, right? Even though it's shed some blood in the short term. So he wants them to be equal and respect. So it's like these philosophies are clashing. There's such cool fucking dynamic there, right? And you build up all these complex characters and the tough situations that they have to go through, and then season 2 is like, oh, God has shown his face. We have to stop God. Like, okay, I'm a cop now. Like, we all work together. All good in the hood, you know, nobody cares. Nice. You know? They got an escape. It removes any sort of character. Yeah, Chris Pratt was gonna sacrifice himself, but then he lives. Like, in fact, that would have made the movie 3 times as good, right? If Chris Pratt had to sacrifice himself in Passengers, then he dies, they save the ship, and then she is left with the same moral dilemma he was in the beginning. Does she wake somebody else up in her remaining 50 years of life alone on the ship? That's the fucking dilemma. They could have done that. That's to be the most precise description of season 2. Nah, it didn't sit right with me initially, but it was heresy to say it. As soon as I said it, people were like piranhas just sniffing blood. They were trying to eat me apart. They're like, how could you not like season 2? Everybody loves season 2. Soundtrack's brilliant. Cinematics are fucking brilliant. I love it. It's reductionist and kills and squashes what made it unique and awesome in the first place. I'm telling you, my score for Arcane Season 1 is like 9.5. The only way it would have been 10 It's if it wasn't related to League of Legends, because then it wouldn't be constricted by the League of Legends lore and staying true to the lore for the sake of sacrificing the story. Like the greatest character is not a League character, it's Silco, because they were super free to do what they wanted with him. They didn't compromise him at all. Yeah, all the nuance and depth died with Silco essentially. It happens to many shows. I think Game of Thrones is one other example. I think when was it the Littlefinger? When Littlefinger died, all the complexity just went out. It went out of the window. Like there's no more games, there's no more Game of Thrones. It's just the most boring fan service back to back to back to back, you know? Like all character complexity, like not only his, but everybody else's kind of went along with him. The dialogue went super shallow, it became predictable and boring. I don't know, I'm glad a lot of people understand and kind of resonate with the idea how they could have made Arcane a lot better. Like, Arcane could have just become its own, like, cult fucking fiction. They could have had fan base for the rest of time if they nailed this. Because it was so good. Like, Arcane and the class complexity and everything, it came to rival Attack on Titan world building. It rivaled Attack on Titan world building straight up, and that's a very difficult thing to pull off. And then they botched it. Didn't take a better thing, but they got more time to work on it, I think. I don't think it's the time. I don't think it's a time issue, because all the animations were crisp as hell. I just think that the direction that they were going in is flawed in the first place.